Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast. You're here with Jeffrey Freed and Kirk Patrick Miller. Today, we're going to talk about something really, I feel, that's very important. And Jeffrey, will get his take in a second. It's about anomie. So I'll just give the definition. It refers to a state or condition of normlessness, right? So a disintegration or breakdown of social norms and values in society. In such a condition, the usual social norms and values that guide behavior become unclear or no longer applicable, leading to feelings of disconnection, aimlessness, and despair among individuals. Now, that's a pretty detailed definition. And Jeffrey, why does that matter so much? Why does that word hold so much power when we talk about right now in mental health?
Boy, how much time you got? Um, it's huge. I first heard that concept when I was in college, undergraduate at Temple University, a long, long time ago, and taking one of my sociology courses, and it hit me as a very, very important concept. Enemy was something that happens to a culture when people don't feel connected to that culture and feel as if they just don't belong and they have no say, no one cares. And of course, there's always people that feel that way. And anyone on the autistic spectrum feels that way from the get go. It also tends to create feelings of just total disenfranchisement. There you go. I could do it. And it was just like, when this was occurring, this is like the late 1970s and 1980s, that time period. When this was occurring, there were a lot of people who had that feeling of enemy. And nowadays it's a pandemic, not to steal a word from some other reference. It is everywhere. And I believe that virtually, 70%, I'm just pulling that number out of my hat, but it's more than half of the people feel like this culture is not working for them. They're not part of it. They have no connection to it. And all kinds of bad things happen when many, many people get a sense of enemy. Um, what ends up happening is I'm not religious, believe me, but one of the things that happen is people don't go to church or synagogue or mosque. They don't join groups. They have connections only with people on the internet. And those types of relationships tend to be shallow, and they're just not even the same if you just stay home or essentially watch movies, or play on video games, or lay down in your parents' basement or whatever it is. You feel isolated. And feelings of isolation, a lot of us do well with isolation, but nobody does well with total isolation, because human beings are not cats. Even cats need some socialization, for God's sakes.
Exactly. Oh,
So
yeah.
it's the kind of thing, we're not cats. So people need other people, at least some of us, not very much, some of us all the time. Introverts don't really need to be around people very much. Extroverts, it's like blood to them, or water. They have to have it. But
Yeah.
regardless, you don't get it anymore. And connections over the internet are not the same as connections face to face or with a group of like-minded people. And we're paying the price for that. What do you think, Kirk? What's
Well,
your take?
you when you brought up, the internet and just this entire concept, the definition alone, just you just get hit over the head with all of these light bulbs, like, oh, social media. The we have more violence, we have more anger. There are so many of these things happening, and it it's I think it's point on, or spot on, especially the aspect of relationships. So online relationships, if they're done well, it can become something that you cherish, and it can be helpful. The hard part is that everything is designed to create almost, in a lot of ways, it creates that division. It feeds the internet when we are arguing. That's what gets impressions. And so it's almost like, honestly, Anomie is a great thing for a social media atmosphere. So if you own, say, Twitter or Instagram or something like that, you're going to do well from this because people do feel badly and they do feel alone. And that's when you also get bad actors that come in and say, I have the solution for you. Here's the answer. And I think you're seeing a lot of, I mean, we've always had scams, but I think a lot of them now are very emotional in the way they take their form, and there isn't repercussions.
Yeah.
And I did like the fact that you brought up something because I am agnostic is how I define myself. There's certain things we can't explain. I certainly, respect people with their beliefs. And there is a very key aspect to like the old style way of, okay, we all go to this church on Sunday because you did have small communities. Even if you weren't really religious and you're just going there to show up, every time you saw the same people, some people you didn't even like, but that was still a connection. And you got to learn from that physically and emotionally. And it's hard to learn complex socialization skills when we're in a state of anomie, which, if you look at how divided the United States is in the world, everything that's going on, it just feels like everything is disconnected and there's no hope. There's aggression everywhere. So, I mean, this word has so much to do with mental health. You look at any person on that is neurodiverse, they don't. Oftentimes, I do very well as an introvert, and I function well with less people. However, I need deep and meaningful relationships, and a
I mean,
lot of times that's something that I don't think you see on online short games where they're playing together. It's not that, at least from what I'm seeing. What's your take?
yeah, well, I would say that enemy is at the core of a lot of many, if not most, of our social ills. The way I look at it is if you live in a small community and you kind of know most people in the community, it doesn't have to be 40 people, it could be thousands of people. But that's still small enough that you run into people a lot. And you develop empathy from hearing their stories, from getting to know them, maybe starting to like them. And what happens is you won't steal from them. You won't, try to screw them any way that you can because you have to live with them and they've personalized themselves to you. So you wouldn't want to because you don't want you. Number one, you don't want people hating you in a small community. God knows. And the second thing is that you don't really, you don't want to hurt them. You know them. It's personal, and that's not happening anymore. We have too many people that are compacted into very small areas. The earth has areas where no one lives because of whatever, and people tend to congregate in huge cities. I was just reading that. I think number one was the Tokyo area, about 31 million people in that area. There's several Chinese cities that are up in the 20 millions. Now, they're including not just the city, but the environs, what we would call the suburbs. New York's not even in, I don't think it's even in the top five anymore, or LA. But I do know that that is a recipe for a huge, intense feeling of anime. Um, if you don't know someone personally, if you hit their car and you don't want to deal with all the paperwork, you drive away, you think, yeah, they'll deal with it. If you know the person whose car you hit, or somebody knows that you know the person whose car you hit, you are going to do the right thing. You're going to put down a letter. You're going to try to get on the windshield. You're going to try to get to know them better. That's missing. And another quick thought was I was watching, I guess it was 60 Minutes the other day, and they talked about how the new thing for people is to not stare people in the eye when they're talking to them because it's too intrusive and sort of creepy. And that's what autistic people think. They don't like looking other people in the eye, because they pick up so much. They read the person. They can't really listen to their words. They're just too busy reading them, looking for social cues, looking for visual expressions, intonations in their voice. Um, and you, so it's becoming normal for people not to look other people in the eye because it's quote creepy. Just
Wow.
another example of disassociation. Um, that's the core of anomie, disassociation, and that's what people on the spectrum do all the time. The people on the spectrum do it because they feel so much, they sense so much. The world is a bombardment, a sensory bombardment. They do it for survival. But now other people who are not neurodiverse, are starting to embrace that type of social ethic. So it's getting more intense. I want to say the word worse. I don't want to put value judgments on it, but it's it's
More into,
becoming more common. There you go. I got it
yeah.
out, and I see it as continuing. As human beings are, they in this culture anyway, they're too busy competing with other people to be nice to other people, and and workers and people that are trying to survive. In essence, they see the people who are their bosses and people who are wealthier than they are as cheaters, as having no empathy. They look at the government. Most everyone doesn't like the government. Depending, it doesn't even matter whether you're left on the political spectrum or right.
Yeah.
That just leads to anger. You can't do anything about it. The government, takes a third of your money, and they don't produce anything. They really don't live up to their end of the bargain. You can't do anything about it. So what ends up happening is you get angry and or depressed. Definition of depression is anger turned inwards.
Inwards. Yeah.
So much of that too.
So many people, honestly, when they see someone angry, they don't put together sadness. But
Yeah,
anger and sadness are often so intertwined because the
yeah,
anger comes out because you are so deeply sad. And that's something that a lot of times people don't realize. And it's important to notice. There were a couple of things. One, when you look at an online, let's say you're an individual, you're young, you have this group of friends you meet every single day on a server, which is the way things work now. So you have a system. What happens a lot of times is there's people that can block other individuals. So when you become part of this, let's say a small community, what happens now is you have individuals, a single individual who has the power to expel someone else and technically cause or force a sense of loss of community. And that's just with blocking in general. If you think of like what that act really is, it's separation. It's not resolution. And I'm a huge proponent. I'm not saying, so everybody listening, I'm not saying you shouldn't block somebody that's being abusive or put up with abusive behavior. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in general, I try never to block someone because there's so much more to learn by just having a discussion. You can be respectful and kind, and you just learn so much. And typically, most people see a lot of things the same way. It's just different perspectives and different belief systems kind of at play. That's important. And just like what we were talking about, that's missing from how people interact with each other. On the other part, where I know in some cultures, like looking somebody in the eye can seem like aggressive, it's a challenge. The fact that that started to happen here in the US is really interesting because, I was always taught like you show respect by shaking somebody's hand, not too hard, just firmly look at the eyes. That's what you were supposed to do. When you have a discussion, it's polite to show eye contact. At least for me, and part of that is because I have ADHD. So if somebody out there that's a parent and you're dealing with somebody who does have ADHD or is neurodiverse or hypersensitive, absolutely, a lot of times, when I would get frustrated because somebody else would not be looking at me as they're talking, and it just would throw me off because for me, if my eyes are focused on somebody, I actually hear most of the words. I won't say all of them because sometimes somebody will literally say a whole sentence. I'm looking straight at them, doing nothing, and I hear none of it, which is so frustrating. So that's a different topic, but it does make me feel separated. I think as everyone becomes more aware of the diversity that we have, it does make us feel a little bit more alone in some ways. Sometimes you find another group that you can combine with. But the more interesting question, and I'll throw this back at you, is Do you think that that lack of eye contact is because there's a societal change, or do you think that the literally the way and the world that we're living in is forcing people's minds to change and become more neurodiverse?
Well, I think the latter. I also, when you were talking, I was thinking, most of us who are visual learners think in pictures. Um, Unless we're actively visualizing what the person is saying to us, we'll hear them, but we won't take the necessary step for us, which is to turn what they're saying into sort of an image. And you can look right at somebody and be thinking or visualizing something else, and it won't register at all. You might as well not have been there. Neurotypical people don't have that issue. Their mind's more like a recorder, so they hear people talk and they can remember the sound of their voice and what they said as if it were like written on a piece of paper, or hear them. We're able to play it back auditorily. And as the population becomes more and more neurodivergent, we get more and more people who fit, somewhere on the spectrum. And I know autism is increasing. No one has to give me stats. I work in the field, and it's everywhere. There's so much evidence; it would take several shows to reveal the evidence. But it's not surprising to me that people are so sensitive now, and they're angry and aggressive, like you said before, that even looking at someone can be interpreted as hostile. They see too much of you. You can, if you have a negative outlook, you'll see only the negative. You'll interpret stuff negatively. So what you want to do is you want to impersonalize or depersonalize most of your social stuff. Therefore, you can't get offended, and you can't offend anybody. And that's what's happening. It's we're so afraid of everything, and we have a lot of reason to be, but not as afraid as we are. And we tend to we tend to try to stay away from any confrontation, because at any time it can turn violent. And that's why we won't want to look in people's eyes. We want to keep it impersonal.
The impersonal part is so prevalent because we don't want to offend somebody, and so many young individuals look at, oh, I have to have these likes, or you know the way we feel we are judged has changed dramatically. I mean, even on TV shows, you see all these people, and it like their title is a social media influencer. I'm like, okay, I've never heard of half these people, but I'm sure
Most
people have, right? So it's I'm not as connected with that world because I grew up in a different one. So things are changing so rapidly, and it's frustrating to in a lot of sense. The world is changing so rapidly and technology is evolving so quickly. We're not catching up in the mental health field and in education. Those two areas are lagging so far behind, and the catch up to get caught up, I don't think it's not gonna happen. And if you look at, if people feel disconnected, well, what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to become part of a group. And now a group is sometimes like it's like Instagram. Okay, I have all of these followers. So followers are seen as a community, but that's not a community. People talk about communities like, oh, I love my community of followers. And in some ways, I guess you could call it that. But to me, it's again, it's a separating like reality in a lot of ways from at least the way I feel reality is. I didn't say that correctly. I don't quite know how to put into words what I was stating, but I do want to say what you just stated about not being able to visualize something. It was spot on.
Yeah,
Oftentimes I try so hard, and that is,
nobody knows it, Kirk.
yeah,
That's the hard part, is that in this day and age, I mean, I've been at this since the 1970s, and people were more akin to a lot of this talk. Like, it wasn't revolutionary. Now it kind of is. So we're regressing. Um, that probably is because, when you were talking, I was thinking something very loudly was appearing in my brain, and that was that it is a defense mechanism now too. It's very safe to have enclaves or coteries on the internet. It's very safe, and you're not getting to know these people really, so you have the illusion that you are um, doing really good social stuff, and there's nothing wrong with your socialization, but they're not real relationships. If they get close, or if someone says something controversial, you just eliminate them, you block them. There are pressures on the people that belong to a tribe, a group, to conform, because you don't want to be ostracized. That's what everybody hates. I mean, it's no coincidence that if you're really, really mad at a prisoner in jail, the way you get him is you put him in solitary confinement. Well, you know what? I think we're all kind of in solitary confinement, not as extreme as prison. But my take is that people are lonely like never before. Obviously, COVID did not help that, but it's still that way. It's abrasive out there, and there's too many people, there's pollution, there's noise, and yet you still need socialization. Most everyone does. So you do it halfway. And doing it halfway on the internet, what that does is that leaves you craving more of it, but you can't really do it because nobody else is playing your game. So it can be very isolating, and I don't see it getting better. We haven't even addressed the problem, um,
No.
let alone solved it.
I mean, until you had mentioned the words when we were discussing the show a while back, I'd never even heard of the concept. And so I dove in, and I mean, as you read about it, it fits so many different angles. And you stated what I was trying to, I did not do a good job. You said it very eloquently, which is how badly people want to be part of something.
Yep,
And you're getting
paranoid.
so much desperation. People are doing really insane things just to be noticed. And that is when you have that desperation to connect, it never becomes, well, it's no one likes desperation. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it, but there's no
Yeah,
nice way to say it. No
just
one
fair.
likes it. Yeah. So, and the problem is that everyone, not one person, not just a few, but everyone feels, even when they're connected with other people online, it still feels lonely.
Mhm.
And for, the individuals out there, we're going, okay, well, suicide rates are, skyrocketing. They are just honestly
The number
unacceptable, in
one
my
cause of
opinion.
death.
It's
Number one
just
cause of death
absurd,
amongst young males.
which is horrific. And we know why some of this is happening, but yet we can't really do much about it. Some of the stuff is actually, we know, um, causing damage. I mean, there were congressional hearings. So, yeah, we know internal memos from companies saying, yeah, we know we're causing damage to other people who use this. But,
Yeah.
so there are a lot of, I would say, issues that are being put on individuals that I have never seen, I've dealt with, or I've never dealt with. Now, and I mean, I think it's only going to get exponentially more intense and very quickly because, especially with AI, we leapt forward. And then you have climate change, whether you believe in climate change or not.
You'll be an idiot
I
not to.
Yeah, well, and the thing is no one can live at 140 degrees. In Arizona, it hit like 140. I mean, you can't go outside, you're going to cook. So when we're getting to that point, where do you go? And an indoor gym is not the same thing as being outdoors. We're losing some things that are like a key value to just how we function. Circadian rhythms are thrown off because we have so much light all over the place. Our brains are trying to figure out if it's daytime, nighttime. I mean, there's so many things put against us, and that's why this particular concept. You look at the violence we see, the mass shootings. You see the just online aggression. I do feel there
Everybody's
could be, yeah, it's just too much anger. Everyone, and the more the internet spreads too, the more the intense this is going to get because the technology is getting to every corner at this point. I mean, there's still pockets that don't have, Wi-Fi and stuff like that, but
not
it's going to
managed.
be, Yeah, it's gonna be zero soon. Starlink's gonna be up, and then you'll be able to access internet anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah,
On Mount Everest, you'll be able to get it. So pretty soon, there's
we
going to
can.
be more of what we're talking about. And um, I do want to state that anyone out there, a good way to just think of yourself and the way to kind of handle all that's going on is learn to be happy with yourself and who you are. I feel like we are kind of walking around and people see what we see of ourselves. So if you want to be seen as somebody who's powerful and strong and confident, that's literally how you have to see yourself. And I think it's become more of a responsibility for individuals to find their own happiness because you don't have that community. And oftentimes the community that you're in can sometimes be fake. That's another issue that we really didn't talk about, but that can be devastating
Most of the
too.
time. Yeah,
Yes.
I
And
completely agree with that. That's
and that hurts because you feel like you had something and then you realize, whoa, this
there's
like
nothing there, no
there's
substance.
there's nothing, and that it's just like a bad relationship where you pour in a lot of time and
Yeah,
effort and you get nothing back. Same
yeah.
thing, and for I really feel just in school and at younger ages, people need to be talking about how to talk with each other, how to express how they feel. I feel so much anger, not just in little ones that I work with, but in adults too. So much of it is just resentment and bottling up emotions. It's just everyone bottles because, like you said before, everyone strives to be part of something. So goodness forbid we say something that might possibly offend. And then what we do is we lose our sense of, ourselves too. So we're lost because we don't have a community, and then we're lost because we're trying to fit in and we don't know where to fit in. There's too many places to fit in.
Right.
I mean, Netflix is a perfect example, in for me. So to make this analogy really easy, when Netflix first came out, there were very few selections. You had to wait for the CDs. I liked it because cable was overwhelming. There's like 1,000 channels. I don't know what to watch. Netflix is now 6 billion different options. I can't decide on anything. So that's kind of, it's not exactly the same thing. But when you have way too much information flying at you,
I, I
you
gotta
don't
say,
process well. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking that the human brain is meant to adapt, where that's, change is reality. There's always change. There always has been and there always will be. However, the rate of change is that's the variable. Our brains are very malleable, but they're not that malleable that we could adjust that quickly. It's happening too fast, and we lack the ability. Most of us, not all of us, but most of us lack the ability to get our heads right, and to deal with all the change. It creates anxiety, and I mean that's the big one: anxiety, depression, um, and it's anxiety is a product of PTSD. And one of my theories is that people on the spectrum are pretty much all suffering from PTSD. Where it's pandemic, to overuse a word. So what's happening is we're getting so much pressure. You can't really express yourself except with a few people, like-minded people, and we're becoming isolates. And if we survive as a species, we will evolve to catch up. But it's a time game. Will we indeed run out of time or suffer such horrible things from different cultures and our culture imploding on itself that we don't make it? I don't know. I hope we do. But we're at a crossroads, and it's not like it was in 1960 with the Cuban Missile Crisis threatening to kill everybody. Um, it's not like it was in even 2001. The feeling of not belonging, of anomie, is so deep, so profound, and very few people have learned how to deal with it.
Well, and I absolutely concur with what you said too about PTSD, and I don't mean to undermine any veterans or individuals who've served or and deal with PTSD. What I mean to say is that when you're living in trauma, and especially individuals who are hypersensitive or on the
Mm.
spectrum, and you hear a light. So for me, fluorescent lights hum. They create a really annoying sound. And the worst thing is an office building because they all have different pitches. They're not, it's not like somebody is tuning the lights, right? So what
Mm.
happens is I walk in and I it's bombardment. And I don't mean to relate that to military or anything, but it's very, very important to understand it is traumatic. And I lived in trauma, especially mania, when when you're not able to control yourself and you're not able to put your thoughts into words, and so you lash out or you act out. It's hard, and I felt very alone for a very long time, and it's it's gotten to the point too where I don't really see people as often. COVID definitely hampered us a little bit and got us out of some habits. And I think it also gave people the idea like, hey, listen, I don't have to go out to survive. I don't think that suddenly everybody wants to do remote because they want to do remote. I think that there used to be a standard norm. Everybody had to go to work. And then once you realize, hey, we can all work, we could do school, some of us online, some of us at school. I think that realization made everybody start questioning all the systems too. And so I liked what you said there. I 100% agree. We we know our brains change. We know we're meant to adapt with neuroplasticity, but this pace of change was never predicted. And especially even watching the AI is just utterly mind blowing. So I don't see us getting to the point where we can fix some of these problems. Because again, the ramping Moore's law is still in effect. We're getting it 10 times. Like, it's just amazing how fast technology is moving. So if we can't catch up, then, and by the way, the whole idea of catch up, we just did the show on anxiety and that feeling of the pressure of time. So it is a race, and that's what we feel. I think humans are very well aware of the fact that things are not right. And I
Really?
actually, you know, I do feel that COVID-19 might have affected our minds a lot more than we know. We know that it has been reported to raise anxiety levels. Who knows what else it's done? But it's contagious enough. Everybody on the planet's had it. So if it does have some neurological effects, I think we're kind of seeing some of that too. So just a
Good
return to
point.
normal. We have Anomie everywhere. We have social media. So I mean, I don't really know if I have an answer. I think one of my best answers is find the special people to you and make sure that you give them a call, not a text. I mean, we all have busy lives, so we have a limited and finite amount of time. But if you're going to communicate with somebody and they really matter to you, a 2-minute phone call gives you so much more data and heart than a long text. And I'm the
Really?
worst at that because I like texting, right? So
Yeah,
what were we gonna
people
say?
meet people. It's not you're not talking, singing into the wind. It's very reliable. People do check their texts.
Do you have, I mean, is there anything that you can think of that people can kind of do to maybe
Excuse me.
avoid some of these feelings? I'm baffled on that
Not
one.
not really. I don't have a solution. What I would say, you can make it better. You can just refuse to play by the rules that are out there now. Um, if you're persistent, you will find other people who believe like you do, and go with them. And basically get it where you can and realize what you're fighting. I mean, I just feel, this is my concluding statement. I just feel that all you need to do, well, not all you need to do, but what you need to do is you need to just not play by those rules. There are people out there, and have them as friends and be very grateful for them, and just don't join the insanity. Just don't
Yep.
play.
Don't play. Don't play. And by the way, I think that's a phenomenal way to kind of end the show, because if we know who we are, know yourself, know what you need, and don't feel pressured to do things that are counter to your nature or are going to harm you from any emotional or mental standpoint. Just be smart about things. There are things in life we have to do, but um, there's different ways to always approach things. So do it from kindness and self-compassion. It just makes life a little bit easier. Jeffrey, that was a wonderful concept. I really wanted to have your thoughts out there for everybody to listen to. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a beautiful week, and we will be back next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know, and definitely like, follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.